And I'm gonna be high.
Good on you, Donald. I'm the Rocket Man, yeah.
I'm a rocket man. And I'm gonna be
Rocket Man.
I'm a rocket man.
All right, we've got Ben Jackson, and he is the founder and CEO of Bungii. I pronounced that correctly. It's Bungii.
Bungii, yes.
Bungii cord. And Bungii is what in your best 30-second elevator pitch, putting you on the spot, Ben?
30-second elevator pitch. Bungii has been compared to popular ride-sharing apps, but instead of delivering food in Prius, DoorDash, right? We deliver big and bulky items with pickup trucks, with sprinter vans, cargo vans, things like building material, furniture, TVs, straight from retailers or even last mile terminals, right to customers, right to the residential homes.
And you guys are doing that with technology or with drivers? Did you purchase an agent network? How'd you build that?
That's a longer story, but let's jump into it. So I grew up in Eastern Europe, Budapest, Hungary. So Budapest, it's a capital of Hungary, which is kind of Central Europe. Sometimes I tell people Budapest, and they're like, "Oh, like how long of a drive is it?" Or like, "Where is that in Western Kansas?" Yeah, I live in Kansas City. It's other side of the world. Okay, yeah. So, but Budapest was part of the Soviet Union, and growing up there,
Really?
even though it wasn't under the Iron Curtain, then when I grew up there, the devastating impact of communism was still very prevalent. And an example I like to give is like in America, like you're walking down the street in a neighborhood, and it's not out of question to say hi or wave or hey, what's going on to somebody. But in Budapest, you're walking down the sidewalk, and both parties just look down and completely ignore the other person, right? And that was weird to me. I'm what's going? Because I would, you being used to America, I would walk hey, what's going on? See a stolk, which means hi, and they're just completely ignored. And I asked one of my Hungarian friends about it, and they're well, back during communism, anyone was a secret police, and you had no idea who the secret police was, and the secret police could be a neighbor or could be someone walking down the street. And there are many times when the secret police would just go into someone's house in the middle of the night, remove the father from the home, and they'd never see him again. No idea what happened to him. So it was very much just keep your head down, keep to yourself, don't raise any attention, don't bring any attention to yourself. So there are things like that culturally, still impact some of the countries that again we're under Soviet Russia. So
permeates culture even after it's done.
Exactly, and it's been 2 generations since then, but it's still very much a part of the day-to-day life. So, anyways, I'd say my single biggest takeaway from growing up over there was yes, America has her problems, of course, but it's absolutely still a land of opportunity. So I was there from 3rd grade till I graduated high school. And, the expectation, my parents are American, expectation is, you're going to go back to America for college. And, moving back to America, my freshman year of college, I always knew I wanted to start a business. I just didn't know what, right? And then, Gabe, I kid you not, one day I had 4 different people ask if they could borrow it was a black 1999 beat up Ford Ranger. A lot of
trying to use a Ford Ranger song in this clip now. So
thank you. A lot of truck guys will be like, oh, a Ford Ranger, oh, that's not even a pickup truck. If it's not a V6, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah. Chevy S10 and a Ford Ranger don't count.
Yeah, exactly. But I drove a Ford Ranger, and again, I'd like to consider myself a nice guy, but after the 4th request in a day, I was exhausted. I was borderline pissed. I was really salty, staring in bed that night, just there's got to be a better way here. And the next day I was in class. I was sitting next to at the time he was just a loose acquaintance, and I just whispered to him the problem for some reason. And I'll never forget this. Super nonchalantly, he shrugged his shoulders, and he's well, let's start a business. And we had no idea.
One of the normal thing.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, we had no idea what we were about to get ourselves into, but we walked out of class that day, with a simple concept in mind, which was tap a button, get a truck, and that idea at the time has really turned into the platform that it is today, and it's scaled coast to coast across 90 major metro areas. We have signed partnerships with the largest retailers, logistics providers worldwide. We're growing over 100% year over year. I have over 15,000 drivers across the country. It's been a journey, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's been a fun one.
Well, that's scaled significantly. How many years have you been running Bungii? You don't look like you just got out of college, but you're not that old. So you got to be like late 20s, early 30s. So maybe 8 years of Bungii. How long you been doing it?
Yeah. That's almost precisely right on. It was 2016 when we were in class, and then we graduated the next year.
No, there you go. That was a guess. I do know Ben Jackson outside of work, but that was a guess. So
Spot on,
um,
man. Spot on.
I'm gonna, because I know you a little bit. We've met in person at Home Delivery World a few weeks back, and Rocket works with Bungii. Just so you guys all know who are listening, I really am biased towards Bungii because I think they're the best final mile partner out there. And I like the idea of their network. I think that my pitch, and I'll just give it, is that everybody's trying to build an agent network, but the way to do final mile in the next 5 years is to not use agents. It's to figure out how to get the shipment close enough to a home for a gig economy carrier to then deliver it. It takes out a ton of complexity in tracking and cost and reliability and service time. But I digress. One thing that I think the audience should know about you, Ben, is that you're a little weird. You were born in America and then you moved to Budapest. That's a little weird. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's done that.
Weird.
And you only eat one meal a day. That's what I heard. And so, like, I'm going to take that and roll with it as, like, you said something earlier. You said that you knew you wanted to start a business. And actually, a lot of people that I've talked to that are entrepreneurs don't have that story. They just accidentally started a business because they thought there's a better way to do it. You did figure out the right business accidentally, but you wanted to start a business. Was that something that is your parents like encouraged that, or was that innate? Walk me through that.
Yeah, I think it was just a juxtaposition between the opportunities that are available to people in Europe versus the opportunities that are available to people in America. And I mean, again, like America, again, it's like has their problems, but it's still absolutely the land of opportunity. And a lot of people, I think, in our generation. We'll talk about socialism, and not to get too political here, but like the American dream, like it's not dead. It's still alive and well, and you can visit other countries and pick up on the fact, but I mean, really growing up and immersing yourself in the culture of not America shows you is a great reflection of how the American dream is alive and well. And still exists today. So that was my background. That was the context of like there's so much opportunity in America, and that was easy for me to see. What was a little more difficult was like, okay, like where do you apply that opportunity? Where do you play that opportunity into? And I think a lot of times, the landscape, the market, like whispers before it shouts. And I think that for people asking about my truck was almost that, okay, there's a need here. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of times the best companies are started from pain points from entrepreneurs, or from at the time just someone in pain. And I'll have a lot of people ask me like, hey, I want to start a business, but I just don't know what. And it's just like, keep your eyes open. That's my advice. Keep your eyes open. Like figure out what's the pain that you have in your life, and then ask yourself, like, is there a business that can come out of that? And thankfully, for me, the answer was yes. And if the answer was no, like I don't think it's out of the question that the next year, maybe there'd be a different pain somewhere else, and a different business would have started.
Yeah, I like that answer. I think that part of it is just talking to you and meeting you, I can tell that like you like to build and you're driven and you want to go, and you didn't move back to America to go to college just to get a degree and try to work your way up from an internship through the corporate ladder. That was never your plan. But it is interesting that you chose what many would call the hardest industry to build a business in, which is gig economy final mile. It's probably one of the most difficult from a technology, staff, funding. I mean, you've been doing it for 8 years, so the funding has been good and bad. You've seen both markets. So how do you square that with, did you accidentally pick a really difficult industry? And did you start, is Bungee now what Bungee was originally, or did you have a pivot there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I, I'll tell a story behind that. So, I like to say that entrepreneurship is a lot like it's a video game that I played when I was little. I don't. It's Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and in the sense that like every time you win, like you're thrown back into the ring again, and you get punched in the face. And
Yeah.
My I was telling someone this, like my little brother last week, a couple weeks ago, was like, Ben, like at times you make it look easy, and like inside I just like laughed, and I was like, God, if only he knew. And then I was like, listen, Quentin, his name's Quentin. I was like, Quentin, like it's not easy. I've just gotten really good at taking punches to the face, right? And like one of those, I'll say one of those punches, it came early 2020, and at the time leading up to it, we were on fire. We had 3 years straight of triple-digit growth. We were, expanding across the country rapidly. We were in, I believe, 30 major metros by then, and this tidal wave of consumer bookings were fueled by ad spend, which was aggressive ad spend. And then, like many people, COVID hit, right? And the stay-at-home orders, dropped like a hammer, and retail shifted online overnight. So going into COVID, like the vast majority of our loads, our orders, our deliveries were consumer initiated in-store demand. So like I'm at Costco, I'm buying a sectional. Oh, how am I going to get this home? Okay, I'll download the Bungee app and coordinate it myself. But with the stay-at-home orders, with the lockdowns, like all of that dried up, and overnight, like literally overnight, we lost 95% of revenue, and that was tough. And like the next morning, we wake up and we're like, do we even have a company? Right. And like, like the vendors, they stopped calling. Yeah. Like our bank, like wanted like updated financials. Like, I feel like every Slack message was another, just like, fire that came in. Like, I remember one of our team members was like, hey, like, should I update my resume? And I'm like, how do you respond to that? Right. It's like, I don't know. And, like there were times when I'm like refresh on the dashboard, just like hoping like can we get some bounce, and like there was none. Like it was just an utter free fall. And I believe that hesitation kills companies, kills startups faster than wrong decisions. And like rarely will a company die from a like single knockout punch.
Hey, Ben, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, no problem.
You said one of your vendors, you were talking about Slack messages and all the fires. Just start over from there for me.
Yeah. So we had lost 95% of revenue, like overnight, right? It was a total gut punch. And we wake up the next morning and we like wondered if we still have a company. The vendors stopped calling. Our bank was starting to like demand updated financial statements. Like every Slack message just felt like another, incoming fire. I remember one of our team members asked if she should update her resume, and I'm like, I don't know how to. I don't know. How do you respond to that?
Maybe.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You tell her no, because you didn't know the answer.
Yeah, right. And I remember like one morning I was just like hitting refresh on our dashboard, just like hoping that we'd see a bounce. And like, no, like the numbers were in free fall. And, I believe hesitation kills companies faster than the wrong decisions. And startups and companies, they don't die from a single knockout punch. They really die from standing still after getting hit. And our only chance of survival at that point was to cut the lifeline, like, cut the millions of dollars we were pouring into ad spend that fueled our revenue. And so, I remember talking to our CFO at the time, and it's like, okay, this would give us 13 months of runway. We have to reinvent this company. Because like, at the time, like we didn't know like how long these lockdowns would last. I mean, it was like 2 weeks. That's what they said. But like, maybe it was longer. I remember there were talks of like, oh, the world, like we won't shake hands anymore. Like the world never, like there was just so much unknown, like at the time. And so we had 13 months of runway. Okay, let's reinvent the company. And we pivoted hard to, I'll say retailer-driven demand. So like our customer support team became a lead gen machine, right? Our engineers, sprinted to build external-facing APIs, when everything had been primarily app-based until then. Our marketing team rewrote the entire playbook. And then something crazy happened. COVID became a huge pull function, and retailers started completely rethinking their supply chain because of this huge influx of on-demand orders, and they turned to us. And 6 months later, like we didn't just recover, but we had shot past pre-pandemic levels, and revenue was sticky. It was steady. Average order value tripled. Our margins surged, and the big win was like we weren't held hostage to this ad spend that we had to drive consumer revenue. And, we had built this highly profitable B2B machine. So, what seemed like an existential crisis, which was really, I mean, it became our greatest growth driver. And again, to your question about like, I'll say pivoting, even to a point where last year we sunsetted our consumer app completely, where, it was on the App Store and we shut it down because of again, maybe a testament to going all in with our B2B focus.
That's the craziest COVID story I've heard, and I've heard a lot of them in supply chain. I think that to juxtapose it, I don't even know if that's the right word, but the LTL or truckload brokerage industry went through a small period of that. But when you're just a brokerage, you don't own the assets or the technology, you're helpless. But as long as the big companies figure it out, you can go back and find more customers. But there's a lot of commission reps I've talked to, and I was one of them. I was a sales rep at the time, where it's like I was commission only, and everybody stopped shipping. So all of my revenue went away. But I wasn't a business owner. I was a 1099. And so I had to kind of reinvent. And the reason I started rocket shipping was because of COVID, because I said, hey, everybody's going to start shipping big and bulky stuff to people's houses. I went to the leadership at the company I worked for, and I was like, I think e-commerce is like going to be the big thing. This is in May of 2020, before it happened. And I was like, we should just go like figure out LTL the final mile. And they're like, no, it'll go back. It's like this, it's a fad. It'll go back to retail. LTL is retail and manufacturing. It's nothing else. So I started rocket shipping because they wouldn't listen. And I was like, I'll just do that then. But you had an existential crisis, and you decided to cut ad spend, which, cost per click and click through rate and all of that, and meta, like you guys had to have mastered that. And then you just turned it off, which is crazy. Because that's like, even if you were profitable, you were probably running a burn rate, because that's how those companies grow, is like you just spend more to make more. And as long as you keep the revenue up, everybody will want to invest in that. That's how those, whether it's freight or not, an ad business, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And then you went, and not only did you just say we're going to pivot to B2B, but that's a whole different business model. Now it's buy, sell margins, and it's like availability and service rate. And it's not one customer one time, it's one customer forever if you can keep them. You probably didn't have a customer success motion, you had a customer support motion. Everything was reinvented. And you didn't have a sales team, you had an ad marketing team.
Yes.
All right, guys, we're cold calling now.
a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's just like a little like business pivot. Okay. But I mean, yeah, Gabe, you just laid it out like perfectly. It's like, no, like it's more than a little pivot. We're reinventing the company from, I mean,
Yeah, and the external facing APIs are not an easy thing to execute on. Obviously, you had a talented engineering team, but it's a different infrastructure. It's a
absolutely.
different coding language as far as I'm concerned, because app coding versus API coding is different.
Yes. Yes.
And
Everything.
I'm not a coder, but I know that you can't just like, not every developer knows every type of coding. So it's not like you had everybody you needed to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
super fun time, Ben. But now 5 years later, I think it is fun and important to remember. We're recording this on July 7th, so it's like July 4th. You were talking about like the American dream. A little bit is to remember like that actually did happen in America.
Yeah.
We did have COVID. It did disrupt everybody, and everybody had to pivot. And it's been 5 years now, so people kind of forgot that
Mhm.
like we were locked down and everything stopped. And like a lot of people attribute it to, yeah, I had to stay home from work and now I get to work remotely. But there was businesses that ended because of it.
Yeah.
Thousands of businesses went under because of that stop, restaurants particularly. But Bungee was reinvented. So now you have a different problem. So then you go to get B2B and you just had a huge windfall, which is awesome. It's like a testament to one of my favorite sayings, which is if you're standing still in business, you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
You might think it's okay. You're like, oh, we're just staying steady. That's not an option in business. That's why nobody wants to. That's why people either sell or try to get a capital call or liquid early, because they just are sick of the volatility, because
Yeah.
it never is the same. And you could have a good year or 3 years, and then COVID can happen and you have to redo everything.
Yep.
So no standing still in this business. You got to be moving forwards. But it is now okay. We have a B2B business, and like, how did you go and pitch that? You said I have drivers that'll deliver stuff from your store to someone's house, and they're the reason I ask it that way for the audience's sake is that big box retailers never did that. So like you had to not only say, here's a service that I can offer competitive rates on. Oh, by the way, you've never done it. You don't know who I am, and it's something that is new. That's an interesting, difficult sell.
Right. Right. I mean, you summed it up well. Like it was interesting, difficult. It wasn't easy, but a lot of it was also just like understanding the market and listening, like understanding your data, right? And we looked at the data, or really from day one. We've been, I'd say like maybe not manic is the right word, but we look at it every day and spend a lot of our time doing that. And we knew that again, a lot of our demand came from consumer initiated retail. So really, the pitch to these retailers was, hey, listen, like we're doing a significant amount of demand from your stores. Your customers are telling us, are signaling that, hey, there's a need, there's a gap right now in your service offering, and we would love to formalize the relationship, right? So, I mean, really, we just like looked at the origination of most of our deliveries, or of all deliveries, and just stack ranked the stores. And like obviously, sales pitches, they take a little bit of figuring out exactly what the right value prop is. But that was the primary value prop, where we let the data, we let the places where we were doing deliveries from do a lot of the talking for us, and in approach like that. And it is really interesting because today's supply chain, specifically the last mile big and bulky, it's highly fragmented. There's wide discrepancies in cost, quality, transparency, availability. It has one of the lowest net promoter scores across any industry. And then to make that problem worse, you almost have Amazon, I'll say, weaponizing the supply chain, causing expectations for delivery, to drastically increase. And to break that down a little bit, Amazon's really good at these parcel deliveries that just show up on your doorstep, same day, next day. And there's a disconnect in consumers' minds of, okay, if a parcel can show up on my doorstep, like a big screen TV should be able to too, or a couch should, or any big and bulky item, fill in the blank. And the ability to execute those two different types of deliveries could not be more different. But again, for the regular consumer, they just don't understand the complexity involved with a parcel versus a big and bulky item. So it's almost like that's an opportunity, right? That's a good thing for us because these companies are learning that their customers are more often influenced by delivery than any other type of transaction, and no one has figured this out for big and bulky, not even Amazon. So
No one ever leaves a bad review on Google because the color was wrong. Like they might say I got the wrong color, but most of the time they're going to go to the company and be like, I got the wrong color. And they're going to say, here's a credit and we'll reship. The
yeah,
amount of reviews, the shipping experience was bad is like 95% of all reviews.
yeah,
And even if it's not a direct correlation, it might be like, I could never get a hold of them. Their customer service is slow. The reason they had to get a hold of that company in the first place is because the freight delivery had gone wrong. There
absolutely,
was no other reason to reach out.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so the last mile is part of it. The full mile is obviously a complex thing. But let me ask you some questions. There's so much money in final mile, and it hasn't been solved at all in any way, shape, or form. You just said the net promoter score is the worst in any industry.
Mhm.
There's so many different models. I think I don't know if very many people who are listening to this actually think about last mile and white glove very often, but the traditional model is to go out like a Werner or a JB Hunt or them and go out and just acquire a bunch of these final mile companies and create a brokerage off of it, or create technology and get people to use that platform and have those final mile agents, I'll call them, but they're really carriers and they just service just Nashville or just Boulder, Colorado. They're local. Get them to use your technology. None of those have anything to do with the shipper and the consumer. They're building in the middle. One of them is a big brokerage buying companies to say we can offer final mile. The other one is a technology company that says, hey, you final mile carriers can use our platform. Neither of those are consumer centric. And so nothing's really been fixed in
Yeah.
a consolidated way. It's still fragmented. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's so much money being thrown at it? There's rumors that Uber Freight's going to go buy a bunch of these final mile companies. There's delivery solutions. There's all these companies with a ton of money, and they're not really fixing the problem. Why is that?
I think what makes it difficult is that final mile, big and bulky, is really where the world of um, art and science meet, and it's hard to get both of those right in that world. What do I mean by that? So I would say that parcel is more science, right? It's high volume. It's drop it, get on the next one, you know, and I'm doing hundreds of these a day, and
Yep.
a pure art, I would say, is I don't know, delivering a historic church bell. I don't know, and that requires a significant amount of planning ahead of time. It probably involves a structural engineer, and
A better example, Ben, would be the space shuttle is moving after this big, beautiful bill just passed. They're moving the space shuttle to Texas from some museum, and they allotted $5 million for freight costs. And I'm just shooting my shot. I will move the space shuttle if you're listening. I don't know who would be listening. Maybe Howard Lutnick.
oh, that's
Maybe Elon.
that,
Someone's going to transport the space shuttle, though. So that's the pure art.
thank you. Wait, so where are they moving from? I didn't hear this. This is fascinating.
It's at a museum. I can't remember which one, but I think it's in DC at like one of the museums there, and it has its own wing. And in the bill, one of the reasons they appropriated like $80 million to be able to like figure out how to move that to Texas, or I think Texas. And I don't know why they did it. I'm not sure where they're putting it, but it's going to be its own standalone museum there. But the freight costs, they budgeted or earmarked $5 million to transport it. So I'm like, I just need to get that one bid.
You're right.
That's one.
Right.
You just can't screw up one shipment.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So yeah, much better example than historic church bell. But anyways, like the reason why executing big and bulky at scale is so difficult is because it requires both sides. I'll say the logistical precision, with the flexibility to solve these real world challenges that are very much in the moment. This won't fit through a door, or there's a missing component to this piece, or this has been damaged before it got, or this is too heavy to, like, all those things I'll have to come together. Or my the end customer said that they would be at home at this time, and they're not. But all I have to say is, we don't deliver parcel, and we don't deliver fast food, and we don't deliver groceries, like we don't deliver historic church bells or space shuttles. I mean, we've built our entire company around this single niche, and because
Yep.
of that, we have the best delivery pros, we have the best technology, we have the best response time, we have the best execution. That absolutely delights customers, proven by our 87 Net Promoter Score, and that
Jeez.
that like intense focus on this narrow niche is really why we're winning. And as long as we maintain that focus, it's why we'll continue to win.
Yeah, and because of the speed and intensity that you guys have, no one wants to compete in that niche because you're already there. And there are companies who compete, but I think, and I've done the research, you guys are far and away a leader in that niche. It is an interesting concept talking about building a model. Like you guys don't have W-2 drivers and you don't own 53,000 tractor trailers. Your OpEx is a lot different model, but you're just using, and I can't believe that more people didn't do this. You're using the same type of tech as Uber and Lyft, and those are and there's others.
Mhm.
And you're saying, hey, we can get access to those drivers and we can vet them and they can do the deliveries, because people might think that that's a foreign concept, but that's actually what the big guys have done with final mile agents anyways. They've just sourced it manually instead of creating a marketplace. It's the
Absolutely.
same drivers most of the time. I mean, it might not be for a pickup truck or a Prius, but if you're talking cargo van and on up, it's the same carriers. They're just accessing it through the Bungii platform and the app, which is a better experience than trying to, API connect to a broker who says they have a customer and then they never see the freight and they mandate them to use their TMS and it just never consummates.
Right, right. And I mean, get like I would perhaps argue that we're able to maintain a higher level, a higher quality of service because we are able to tap into um, a unique group of our delivery pros, unique group of our starting, and then all of a sudden we had a lot of like policemen, EMT, firefighters applied to be Bungee drivers because it really works out well for both parties. For them, they work 24 hours on, 48 hours off. They're kind of looking for something to do in their off time. And it's not enough to get a part-time job, but it's enough to, want to do something. And for us,
Yeah.
having the men and women who protect and serve our communities as the people who are going into homes is great because of the very
They're
high level.
pre-vetted. Yeah,
Exactly.
they're
Very
vetted and
professional.
highly qualified. That's a cool.
Exactly.
I didn't even know you guys did that. That's cool.
Exactly. And then that like turns into like middle school and high school principals, right? And it's like, they work during the day, during the evenings, during the weekend, they're off during the summers, they're off, they want to, earn extra money on the side, which is great again because of the high level. So like this model, I'd say opens up um, the aperture to a whole entire group of people who are members of the community, who are well regarded, who bear a lot of responsibility that will elevate your delivery experience when these type of people enter your home. So, obviously
Yeah.
we have an 18-point safety standard, background check, vehicle check. We do all of that, but for us, it's okay. Like, who are we targeting from a driver perspective, and how do we make sure that these are very trusted professionals?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, or the way that I look at it is you guys have a really sophisticated way of sourcing driver capacity. But you're going to shippers in a B2B model, you're going to shippers and saying, I have a delivery solution that your customers already are asking for. And I have to pull this thread from earlier, just so that everyone who's listening might understand it better. You had consumers going into a Costco and buying a large item, and they were able to go on the Bungee app on their phone and have somebody help them move it because Costco wasn't offering that. That's just one brand, but like that's an example.
Mhm.
And then when you pivoted, and I wouldn't even call it a pivot, when you reinvented, you basically went to Costco or whoever it might be. It's not necessarily them, but you went to that client and you said, hey, here's data of your customers coming into your store and using us. Why don't you just offer it to them? Why don't you just do it? What a smart way to sell to them. And I forgot to pull that thread. I was like, man, that's better than a cold call. But if you look at it, like a bunch of truckload brokers out there are just using DAT and ITS to source drivers who are owner operators, and they're just dedicating their whole truck. You guys built a much better way to source drivers local within 150 miles in any equipment type, whether it's a car through a 53 footer, maybe box truck. It's just another way to source, but you guys are doing it. It's a network effect, and I just love it because the larger the network gets, the better the product gets. The
Absolutely.
more drivers that are highly qualified and doing a great job, then you can drive the net promoter score, and then you can get more clients to use it. Then they give you more freight, and you need more drivers, and the network gets more reliable and covers more areas. That's a sweet business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It starts with the demand. More demand leads to more delivery
Yeah.
professionals, leads to higher retention of those delivery professionals because they're earning money. I'll take a quick step back here. So what's been one of the earliest challenges, and I mean it's still a challenge, although we have a playbook for it. It's building supply and demand at the same time, and there's a very, I'll say, a delicate approach. And when we launched Bungii, it's not you open it up to all of America and say have at it, right? It's a very targeted, I'll say, systematic, disciplined approach. So we open up a city at a time. And the reason you need to do a city at a time, and really it's a subset of a city, and then the geofence expands, but you target a subset of a city, and you have to, again, build supply and demand at the same time. And what's supply, what's demand? Good question. So supply in our case is the delivery professionals. The demand is these orders, deliveries, freight, whatever you want to call it. And if you go into a city and you have a lot of the delivery professionals, but not the demand, all of a sudden, these delivery pros are like, I just signed up, I give them my information, and I can't make any money. This is dumb. Delete the app, 1-star review, reputation ruined.
Yeah. There's no getting them back either.
Exactly. And then conversely, if you have a lot of demand but no supply, you have these retailers, you have these logistics companies who are saying, listen, I signed up for you guys to deliver our items to the customer, and there's no one here. I can't get connected. Like, okay, this is not a good service. I need to find another broker, another carrier, another person to solve this problem. And all of a sudden your reputation's ruined too. So there's a very precarious balance that you really have to build, and I'll say handhold, both sides of this marketplace at the same time, and until it gets to a level of equilibrium. And oh, by the way, you have to do that for every single time you launch a specific market. And a good example of this is that the first market we expanded into was Atlanta. So we're headquartered in Kansas City. We expanded to Atlanta. We moved half of our team, which granted at the time it's like a 6-person team, so it's not. But so we moved like 3 people down there, and they were there for 9 months to get Atlanta up and running. And how much did it cost? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now we can launch a market in 2 to 3 weeks, for less than $10,000 and have it up and running and fully operational. So, but
are you running ads? Are you running ads to get drivers? Like, is there an ad business on that side now, or how do you recruit drivers or like get that visible to somebody who would be a driver?
Gabe, I will say that the driver recruiting piece took about half of my time for the first 3 years of running the company, and we've honed it into a very repeatable process that we can do at scale remotely better than anybody else for big and bulky. So I'll end it there. But going to
you and Harrison just drive to those cities and deliver for a month, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's pretty sophisticated. I didn't mean to give your playbook away. My bad.
But anyways, Gabe, to your point about the network effect, like with more demand leads to more drivers, higher retention. More drivers, higher retention leads to more geographic coverage, higher saturation within the geofences. This leads to faster deliveries because the deadhead time, the drive time to pick up or to the origination is less. Also leads to less downtime, and with shorter drives with less downtime, all of a sudden you can offer better rates to the enterprise customer, and then that leads to more enterprise customers, which leads to more demand, in this virtual cycle continues. So to your point, like marketplace companies, they're difficult to build. They're difficult to get going. But once you have this flywheel effect working, it provides one of the best moats out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best moat, but the reason is because no one can ever do it. It's very low success rate to build a marketplace effect. And then when you do it, you're going to have successful returns year after year, because you can imagine, and maybe I'll ask, did you ever, what kept you up at night? And if it was me, I would have been kept up at night by, I got the supply or the demand. The demand would be the enterprise shipper. I went and got the demand, and I don't have the supply, and I stayed up at night and I figured out the supply, and then the demand came to me and said, you know what, we changed our mind and went with somebody else, and now I'm just left holding the supply, and I'm like, sorry again. Like, that had to have kept you up at night.
Absolutely. And I would say that as a company, we have a culture of feedback loops and a culture of being like obsessed with removing friction for our customers. And this culture of customer obsession, I know that everybody says that, but we really do. This culture that we've established has led to zero churn, like literally zero churn. So we've yet to lose an enterprise customer and have an enterprise customer choose somebody else after they experienced our service.
Clip it. That's awesome, man. That's so good.
Yeah. And I think that's a proof point of the way that we've built the company around doing what it takes to make sure that we solve our customers' problems, that we surprise, we delight them, and that we build trust. And to your point, yes, that's a problem, but thankfully that's a problem we haven't dealt with yet. I'm sure that in the history of the company we will have a customer churn eventually, but establishing this pool of supply of Bungii drivers, of Bungii delivery pros, and then having also the rug pulled out from under us from a enterprise client standpoint, thankfully hasn't happened.
Look at that. I mean, that's just like my favorite story so far on this podcast is zero churn. What I think about is you don't have to get 100 new customers a month if you just don't lose customers. And then you still should get 100 new customers a month, and that's the real growth. But too many brokerages focus on net new, like the big ones, TQL, Worldwide Express Group. That's just all net new. And then on the other side of it, the small, medium-sized brokerages are just like, oh, we have 12 clients, things are good. Well, eventually those clients could churn, so they're standing still. I've always that keeps me up at night is churn. How do I make sure we keep our clients forever? And I do think that the reason that we've innovated in this space is because of like preventing churn. So we've said, hey, what would our biggest client, why would they leave? Or maybe they told us, our biggest client did say, hey, we're going to have to leave because of XYZ. So we just said, hey, look, can we build that? And then you don't have to leave. And then now we offer that to everybody because it was such a good model. We're like, oh, well, that is something we can go get new customers for, because if we get those customers, they also will not churn. And so I think that that's the best way to build a company anyways.
Yep.
Ben, let me see here. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Who are you? Like you grew up in America, then you left, you came back. You grew up in Budapest for a long time. You came back. Did you get married, or is that why you stayed in America, or what was your plan there? Was it Bungii?
Yeah. That's a good question. Let me speak to one more point about what you said earlier, because that's so good. Where it's like, I think that the signal or the impetus of a good startup, of a good company, can be a pain point that the founder is feeling, or problems that they run into, and then as the company matures and evolves. To your point, Gabe, it's like the next, I'll say, growth phase, or like the next, like, where do we take this, is the end customer, right? And it's listening to your customer. And if you have a close enough relationship, if you have these feedback loops in place, which, like, again, a feedback loop doesn't have to be some like sophisticated tech stack. It could just be like, I talk to my customers every week, right? Or it doesn't have to be extremely sophisticated. The customers will guide you to where the business should be and where it should grow into. And to your point, it's like, it sounds like, they were asking for X, Y, and Z, and you built it out. Okay, great, perfect. Like, for us, it's like, it was a little bit indirect, but it was like, where are deliveries coming from, right? And like, our customers guided us to where the business should be. So it is interesting if you think about like maybe the life cycle of a business and how to start a business and how to grow a business. Like, there's slightly different signals. But I fundamentally believe that your customer will always lead you to where you need to go. So, okay, so let's start about me. So remind me, what was your question?
Well, yeah. So my question was, who is Ben? Why did you stay in America? Was it a girl or was it Bungii?
That's funny. Um, uh, why did I mean the answer was both, all the above. I so uh, so I'm an American. I have an American passport. I don't have a Hungarian passport, and I always knew I wanted to live. I wanted to settle down in America, and my parents did a good job of bringing me back to the States, during the summers, and like they like, looking back on it now, I'm like, maybe I was a little, speaking of weird, who's weird around here. Like they would send me to like, they bring me back to the States for the summer, and then they like send me to like 3 camps, like back to back to back. And I just thought that was like normal, what everybody did. It's like, no, that's not how a normal summer is. But like, they're like, Ben, we don't want you to be that weird European kid. So like, we are trying to like inject American culture in you by sending you to all these different camps. And like, I didn't work. I don't know. I mean, you guys are probably the judge of
I
that.
was just about to say it didn't work. Ben.
Yeah, right, right. Um, but looking back, like growing up, like the best times in my life were always the summers back in the States, and like they're even like stupid little things like we land in America and we always go to Taco Bell, right? And like that's like that's just so American, and like even stuff
That's
like,
at least top 5 things to do in America is go to Taco Bell.
dude, this is okay. This is even crazier. Like you would go into Walmart and like your like jaw would drop, and just like, this is unreal how big the store is. Like all of the selection, all of the different like you walk down the cereal aisle and there's like 100 different cereal. Like, I mean, like it was
So
really
much
like,
smaller.
yeah, man. Like literally one of the it sounds I'm such a nerd. One of the highlights of coming back to America, like you'd always be so excited about going to Walmart for the first time, back in your state in the States. And again, it living in non-America gives you an appreciation for America, and like the stupid stuff like Walmart, the stupid stuff like Taco Bell, like even stuff like highways or like the size of it. Anyways, nerding out about that. So like I always knew I wanted to come back to America for college, and figure out a way to settle down here rather than going back to Europe. And again, I hope I'm not like speaking poorly about Europe or other countries. There are things that obviously I think that other countries do well that America could learn from. But again, America is the greatest country in the world. So
Yeah, there has to be a second place, third place as well. So
yeah,
it's
right.
not like they're terrible, but they're not America.
Right. I did got married my last year of college. Actually, I got married relatively young, and I have 2 kids and one on the way.
Wow. So you got married, you're still married, you got 2 kids, one on the way, and you run a business. You've defined all the odds here, Ben. I love to see it. I do love to see it. It's awesome because I think that too many people, especially in America, this is like permeating our culture in the wrong way, and we need to look back to Europe probably for this. Is like we just have kids later and later, and
Yep.
people are so career focused. And I love having people like you on. It's like, oh, you did all of these things you've talked about during the show and got married and you're on your 3rd kid. So you can do both. And you don't have to choose career or family. You can just live life and do it as big as you can. So that's really fun to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be easy, to be clear.
It's harder.
It's good.
You chose the harder path.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast. I forgot who it was about, but they're saying that if a lot of people, if you think about a person that you admire the most, and a lot of times that person has voluntarily decided to take on tremendous amounts of responsibility, and that really hit home with me because it's like the people that I admire the most are the people who chose to do the hard thing, and the effect of that, the impact of that has been them carrying a lot of responsibility. But that's not to get too like metaphysical here, but like I really believe like that's where the like meaning and purpose of life is found, right? And it's not from money, it's not from status, it's not from power. Like it's like I really believe it's from responsibility, and it's from carrying a load, and it's from carrying weight, and I believe that people,
Purpose.
yeah, and I believe that like as people we are wired to have responsibility, to carry the weight, to carry a load. And I believe that that's, again, where the purpose and a lot of the meaning of life will come from.
Yeah, I love that. And I did want to share something. This is the first time I can announce this. Earlier today, right before I got on the podcast, I was at court because I just finalized an adoption of my 2-year-old daughter.
Let's
so
go.
They were filming this July 7th. It has been 11 months in the making. She's been living with us for 6 months. No, 10 months. And officially placed with us 6 months ago. And so today was finalization day. So we got the whole family together and went before the judge and raised the right hand and said, I'll take responsibility. It's kind of interesting. You use that exact verbiage. The verbiage from Judge Grady today was, are you saying yes to being fully responsible for the well-being of this child? And like they charged us as parents, like from this day forward, you're fully responsible for their health, no one else. And I'm like, yeah. So that's our third. We have 6, 4, and 2, or 6, 5, and 2.
Come on.
And so
That is so cool.
it's
That's
awesome.
cool. What's her name?
Her name is Allison. We call her Allie.
It's beautiful. Dude, that is so cool, man. That is so cool.
Yeah. I'm going to make a post about it. There's an amazing story behind it. And why did we adopt a 2.5-year-old? Like all those things. But for today on the show, it's official. And I've been waiting to be able to share that. So we'll definitely be extra thankful today. And it's kind of a little day of celebration for us. It was a long road with a lot of turns and a lot of different circumstances. 3 lawyers, 2 different district court judges. You wouldn't think it's that complicated, but it is. And so luckily for Allie and for me and my wife, I've dealt with lawyers for now the better part of 6 years running the business, and I've been in lawsuits, and I knew exactly what to do. And I was like, man, I was equipped to do just this. But it is the reason I brought it up, and I wasn't really going to talk about it on the show, but you talked about, this responsibility, and that's what the words of the judge were today too. So thought that was relevant. I mean, I just think it's fun to build a business, but it's not the purpose of life. And one other thing, this is getting a little bit metaphysical as well. I was listening to Joe Rogan and Bernie Sanders. He had a podcast with Bernie, and they were talking about if AI automates all the jobs, right? And it was like a dystopian mindset. If AI automated all the jobs, what would humans do? We'd have no purpose. And Bernie, Joe, to his credit, was like, there's purpose beyond work, but like that's what people actually think is their purpose. And Bernie kind of missed it, I think. And I do like Bernie Sanders. I'm not a Bernie bro, but I do like him as a politician, and like how he's always true to whatever he thought, his whole career. He's same thing from 1970 to now. He's saying the same thing. So that's pretty rare. But he missed it. He was like, yeah, that, we'll have to figure out a new meaning. And I was like, well, no, the answer is that work was never supposed to be the meaning. It's just that work creates structure for responsibility. So you're responsible for something, but that was the meaning. And so it's an interesting question to deposit there, because you brought it up, and I was just listening to that today as well. So look at you go, Ben. You're just getting all philosophical, making me really think about life and the meaning on a podcast. But let me turn the tables back to you for some rapid fire. I want to know, you built this successful company. Like, obviously, kudos to you. You've had to reinvent it once, and like, I actually think it worked out better for you because you reinvented it into a model that wasn't paid ads and attribution and clicks, and instead was B2B and margins and supply and demand.
Absolutely.
But what do you think of this current market? Who's going to be the players that win besides Bungii? How should a company, if they're either they're competitors to you, or they're in a similar space, or maybe they're in Truckload, Brokerage, but like, funding model aside, what things does a company need to do today to actually be successful in 2026, assuming nothing changes in the market?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an answer that's not cliche, but I would just, when it comes to like business fundamentals, I always believe that it's best to focus on your customer, not your competition. And a lot of times I'll see, well, competition's doing this or this, and we should do this, and it's like, no, stop. Focus on the customer. That matters. Don't worry about competition. Like like building product strategy or tech strategy or any other type of strategy because competition is doing it, I believe is one of the fastest ways to lose. And it's really the opposite of a first principles thinking approach. And I believe the answer is to focus maniacally on your customer.
Yeah, and I think the first principles part, to pull that thread, they're skipping what problem should they solve and just going to how can we get more revenue and what are our competitors doing to get different revenue. But they're skipping the foundational question of what are we trying to accomplish, which is first principles. And every company in freight tech right now is making that mistake, which is kind of interesting that you say, like, it seems so obvious when me and you talk about it, yet somehow every company I've ever heard of basically in freight tech is doing the exact opposite. They have pitch decks on their competitors and the market and a market problem to revolutionize the industry.
Yep.
And none of them are talking about the people who are going to end up causing that demand, which would be the consumer or your customer, the shipper.
Exactly.
And maybe, depending on the niche business, it could be the carrier too. There's 3 transactions. There's a consumer, there's a shipper, and there's a carrier. Brokers only think about revenue and GP and percentage and profit per load, and they forget what causes all of that to happen, which is really interesting and unique that you have the perspective of looking at your orders. Where did they come from? What caused that order to happen? Now I'm going to reinvent it. So,
absolutely.
All right, I have one more difficult question for you.
Okay.
I ask everybody this question as we're coming up on an hour here, and I would go 2 hours with you because we got lots to talk about, but we both are running businesses or something like that. I don't know. So what's one mistake that you made building Bungii? It could be from early days. It could be from last month. One mistake that you made that actually you didn't have to make. It can't be a formative mistake like, hey, I thought it'd be consumer and I pivoted and reinvented to B2B. I thought I should hire somebody and I didn't, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise because we got them later. It can't have been something that actually helped you later. What mistake did you make that was just stupid? And then if someone's listening, they're like, hey, I started a business. I'll just avoid that one. Ben J hooked me up. He told me not to do that. What would you think is that mistake from you?
So you said I can't have learned from it, or what was the stipulation?
You can have learned from it, but it can't be formative to how you ended up. Like if you made a mistake and then that led you to success, it can't be one of those. It's got to be one that's just like, oh, that was stupid. I didn't file this LLC correctly, or I didn't realize that when you fire somebody, you should pay them severance because I got sued, all these different things. Something that anybody else could say, I'll just skip that one and still be able to be successful.
Okay. Yeah. It's going to be less like tangible, like filing something, but it's like, it's almost like something that I wish I could, and advice I would have given myself like on day one. And it's building something cool requires doing a lot of uncool things. And, these are things that most cool people aren't willing to do. And, one of my favorite quotes is from Andrew Weinrich, and it's, I feel like I almost have it memorized by now, but it's like businesses take time. You need a 10-year commitment, and businesses are not built overnight. They're built over a protracted period of time. And the winners are those who ride the highs and the lows, that pivot, that iterate, that stay the course. And if you're not willing to like deeply engage for 10 years, it is probably not the right opportunity for you. And I'll segment that by saying, like the journey, it's not glamorous. And, I've taken midnight support calls. I've driven through a snowstorm to make a delivery personally. I felt the gut wrenching punch of a 95% collapse in revenue overnight. And, I've written personal checks to help make payroll. And Bungii is no longer this scrappy startup. And now it's a category defining, I'll say, tech enabled leader. And we can deliver with this speed, flexibility, precision that that traditional players simply cannot. So all that, that's the what, right? That's something that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
But the how is, I feel like, more important. And it's like, I wasn't born into wealth, and I don't have an influential last name, and I'm rarely the smartest person in the room, and I still have a lot to learn. But I know how to work, right? I know how to persist, and I know how to keep pushing when others quit. And Bungee and most successful companies, they're not built on luck, they're not built on privilege, they're built on grit, and they're built on discipline. And that's something that I'm extremely proud of, and that's something, again, I wish I that's a mindset that I wish I would have had on day one starting the business.
I don't think I could add to that. I won't. That was, I think, the best advice we've gotten on this show. So, audience, take that, write it down, follow it. If you're running a business, it's very specific to someone who's building a business, and that, I think that's important. It's not really an employee mindset. Like, if you are an employee and that's the mindset, then just start your own business. That's your sign. But I do think I will not add to it, but I'll contrast it with, you said a 10-year mindset. That's the problem with the industry. That's why nothing's getting solved, Ben, because no one has a 10-year mindset in Final Mile. Everyone has a 3 to 5 year exit goal.
Yep.
And that's whether the founder wants that, or the investors want that, or the market and the roll up and the private equity. But that's the incentive. Nobody does it for long enough to make that difference. They're just trying to get out. And I think that being able to persist is the point. Absolutely. And that's like, any company who can persist for 10 years is the best company in that space, because that's the ones who stay around for that long are not failing. You can't have failed in that time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be around still, obviously, but you also can't have not grown. There is no standing still in that market. So you have to be successful if you're around for 10 years. I do, Alex Hormozzi paraphrases. Who was that? The guy you quoted? Andrew
Weinrich.
Hormozzi paraphrases him and just basically says, hey, anything you're not willing to do for 10 years, you shouldn't ever start, because people think they can get rich quick. And then he also says the number one rule in business is to stay in business. And I think that kind of summarizes that too. Like, it doesn't matter exactly what happens or what punch you take. If you can just stay in business longer than everybody else, that's the only way to win. It is a game. There is no necessarily end outcome that fits everybody, but staying in business longer than everybody else, you win on a continuum. So I appreciate it, man. Thanks for making time for us. You're running an awesome company. You've got a great team. I can vouch for that. You're great to work with, and it's just a success story. I'm glad to be able to share it.
Excellent. Gabe, it was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
How do people find you, Ben? What if somebody wants to get a hold of you? If it's enterprise shippers listening to this, I get a referral bonus, but how do they find you?
Yeah, we need to finalize that contract, don't we, Gabe? Yeah, go to Bungii.com. Bungii, Bungii.com, and reach out to us from there. Or, if enterprise shipper, just reach out to me personally. My name is Ben Jackson, ben.jackson@Bungii.com. And we'd love to see how we could help.
All right. And if you're in the sales tech space and you need to sell somebody like Ben Jackson some vendor stuff or some software, you just got his emails.
I hate you.
Oh, man. All right. I appreciate it, Ben. You have a great day.